Welcome to the Racer X Exhaust podcast. It is a golden era for Grand National cross-country racers. My heritage, my home, my heart, that's where I broke into the industry. I say it all the time. When a kid comes up to me at the races and says, "How did you get the job you got?" I say, it started with covering quad races in the woods. And then the kid turns and walks away and says, yeah, I'm out. If that's what it takes, I'm done. But seriously, man, I tried to work for Racer X. That was the goal. But the only opening they had was the job that no one wanted, which was covering quad races in the woods and going to the local newspapers and TV stations and trying to get them to cover the circus that we were bringing into town. It wasn't glorious. GNCC is a tough life, whether you're a racer or you're a worker. It's definitely, let's put it this way. People always tell me, Supercross is great. It's 5-star hotels. It's staying in cities compared to the Nationals. And I'm like, dude, the Nationals are like stepping up to Supercross compared to GNCC when you consider the hours and how remote everything is. We had 2 days of all-day racing in all kinds of weather outdoors every GNCC weekend. But I grew up in that series, and I still love the folks there. And 2 riders who I watched growing up through the ranks are now really making names for themselves. First, there's Kailub Russell, who is working on another championship right now. This would be 6 in a row, which would be the record for most in a row. He already has the all-time overall wins mark for the series, which is crazy because their record keeping goes all the way back to, I believe, 1974. And he's won the most races of anyone. He actually passed the legendary Scott Summers record. But look, I understand if you're not a guy that follows woods racing very closely, it's hard to know where does that make him stand. Is he just dominating one particular series? How good of a motorcycle racer is he actually? Kailub has a couple other accolades. He actually won the AMA National Enduro title and the GNCC title in the same season a couple of years ago. He's the first rider to ever win them both in the same year, ever. First guy to ever do that. But still, if you really want to prove yourself as an all-arounder, you got to race traditional motocross or even give a shot at Supercross. I mean, look, that's where the glory is. That's where the attention is. We all know this. So Kailub has been sort-of readying that. It actually started by going down to Alden Baker's in the summer of 2016, I believe. He went down to Alden Baker's just for training to see where he was. Did have some intention of maybe racing motocross. I talked to Alden about that. He said at the time he was not ready. As Kailub will allude to in the podcast today, he was maybe good enough to qualify. But Alden feels it would be better to do better than that because he knows if you're a champion of a series and you come out and you get 38th and you just qualify, is that really making yourself look good? So Alden held him. Basically, KTM said you can race a national when Alden says you're fast enough to impress people. And that day finally came at Unadilla a couple of weeks ago. Now, ultimately, it ended badly because Kailub crashed. He hurt his shoulder and elbow, and he decided not to race the final 2 nationals, which we'll talk about here. It wasn't a huge injury, but he admits motocross not being his specialty, he is not going to just show up at the races if he's not 100% and hasn't been able to put in the perfect schedule during the week, and that injury from Unadilla threw him off just enough. But the performance there certainly was buzzworthy. It came at the right time. You get late in the season and someone jumps in like that, we're kind of all starved for something new and fresh when it's round 10. So that was exciting. He's riding for the Red Bull KTM team. Musquin hasn't had a teammate all summer long, so that's a little extra hype. And then it also started to rain, and then he did really well. So all these things pointed to, oh, wow, that was impressive. That was cool. I would imagine there's a lot of fans that hadn't really watched him ride or really had thought much about him. Maybe they just knew his name. And at one point he was running 3rd in the first Moto and had a good start in Moto 2 and was battling with Barsha and Marvin and Eli and all that, for a few corners. So that was a great performance. So even though Kailub is working on what could potentially be a 6th straight title, so in his day job he's really only doing what he's been doing for 6 years, right now, the profile and the respect is probably higher than it's ever been, just based on that Unadilla performance. Now, the other reason we're in the golden age for GNCC is Aaron Plessinger. Bro, Aaron Plessinger has now become the hot property of motocross and supercross, wrapping up a 2-championship season. I knew Kailub when he was very young. I knew Aaron when he was very young. I would love to say that I saw this coming. I did not. Kailub was really good in the GNCC youth and amateur ranks, but I didn't necessarily think, once he turns pro, he's going to break all existing records. There were several other riders who were right there, and if you had to throw money down on which one would be the best, I mean, Kailub would have gotten a quarter of the votes. Thad Duvall would have gotten some of the votes. A couple other guys would have gotten votes as well. It was not a predestined where he was always for sure the best youth rider. He just became the best once they all turned pro. And as for Plessinger, I actually do remember him racing motocross a lot. The story he keeps telling is that he grew up thinking GNCC because Aaron's dad was a GNCC champion. But I remember him being very fast and very talented at motocross. And correct me if this sounds strange, but the thing I remember about Aaron, both in the woods and the motocross track, was he could be very, very fast at certain times, but it wasn't always sustainable. Does that not sound like the Aaron Plessinger we know now, who can just blitz one section unbelievably well, and then you think, it's lights out, this guy's going to dominate, and then it doesn't always happen? That was what he had to corral this year. So I definitely saw speed and talent, but I didn't have him marked for this level of success at all. I wish I did. I wish I could say that I knew that Plessinger and Russell were going to become the two guys 15 years after I met them, but I'd be lying to you. I just thought, they have some talent, maybe they'll be good, but I don't know for sure. Most people probably would be more ego and say they saw this coming and then tell everyone that they told everyone and then say no one believed in me. Whatever. Congrats to those guys. Now, to further entangle this, how odd is it that Aaron Plessinger's dad is a legend in off-road, two-time GNCC champ? He was the one that battled Scott Summers all the time. To put in perspective, a lot of you probably know who Scott Summers is and what he was. He was like the god of off-road in the 90s. Well, his nemesis every week was Plessinger. If you got a Tomac battling, you're going to have a Roxon or a Muscan to duel them. That was Scott Plessinger. He was right there with Summers all the time. Now, Kailub Russell's dad, Jeff Russell, was better on the Enduro side. He won the National Enduro Championship in 1991. So with both of these riders, Kailub Russell, Aaron Plessinger, you're looking at second-generation riders. And whatever, let me just throw in that Kailub's rival every week for race wins in GNCC these days is Thad Duvall. Thad's dad, Chad, was actually one of the top ATV riders. And yes, I know that because those are the races that I broke into the industry covering. Chad Duvall, Thad's dad, also won a ton of ATV races in the GNCC side. So all three of them really are sons of woods racers, and they've reached the top. So an interesting situation there in and of itself. But there is one other part of the Kailub Russell story where the plot really thickens. You see, Jeff Russell, Kailub Russell's dad, is married to Carrie Coombs Russell. That is Davy Coombs' sister. She runs the GNCC Series along with Jeff. It's basically a husband and wife business. I know. We're like Walmart. We're Fortune 500. We're giant corporate in motocross terms. This sport isn't really that big. The big giant company that is Racer Productions or MX Sports would really be considered a small family-run business in most industries. So it gets a little bit tangled when everyone knows that the guy that's winning all the races, his dad, is the one that helps run the series. And even more specifically, they call Jeff Russell the GNCC trail boss. Now, originally that was because he was the man that built the tracks. But as Kailub started to advance to the ranks, there were so many jabs being taken with people saying, he's winning the races because his dad builds the tracks, that Jeff had to back away. And actually on Sunday, race day for the bikes, Jeff, I don't even know where he goes. I think he just digs himself a trench and hides in it. But he purposely is not seen in public at all, so no one can claim they saw him on the track rigging things or talking to his son and giving him advice on how the track is built. Carrie, that's actually Kailub's stepmom. Kailub's actual mom, Tina, lives in Ohio. She still comes to the races. She still gets along with the Coombs family very well. I see her all the time, usually down in some mud hole pulling bikes out. Not just Kailub. Half the time it's Kailub rivals. Basically, if you crash in the mud, Kailub's mom is going to be there pulling you out. That's just what GNCC people do. But anyway, when you combine his high profile with winning races and the fact that his dad and his stepmom run the series, and then, hey, if you guys want to throw in your Coombs, MX Sports conspiracy theories, the heat gets on. And in this very revealing podcast with Kailub, he tells me that last year the heat was so on that it had practically sapped all of his enthusiasm for racing at all, and he wasn't even sure he wanted to do this anymore. So we'll get into that in depth here. My hope with this podcast is twofold. Hopefully you have respect for the off-road guys. I know these riders well. The work they put in, the skills that they have are great. So hopefully you respect them just for that. Second, even if you're not interested in the off-road game, I think Kailub's story is interesting in and of itself enough for you to want to listen to this, and maybe you'll learn some things too. And we get some hilarious stories of that Unadilla weekend. The next time Kailub races one of these, if he happens to get up into third place in a moto, they really need to not put that on the pit board because he even freaked himself out because he was doing so well. I mean, an actual podium finish at one point was in play. I don't think he had prepared himself mentally for that, and it actually led to a couple of crashes. So it's cool to see someone when they're in their element in the woods. You'll hear Kailub, when he goes to the starting line in a woods race, there is no shortage of confidence. He expects to be up front. But then you hear the Kailub at a motocross race, and there is huge respect, and he was very humbled, I think, by the entire experience. So that's going to be this week's episode of the Racer X Exhaust podcast. And since I had a front row seat to all of this, because I was working at the GNCC races, under Kerry Coombs Russell, under Jeff Russell, watching Kailub Russell grow up at the races, I've got some insight as well. But go ahead, just claim that they paid me off. There's a bonus check coming to spin this the right way. Go ahead. You know me, man. I like money. And maybe you do too. I'm going to save you some. Go to the racerxbrand.com site and type in exhaust in all capital letters, and we'll give you 20% off. We have a patriotic line that is expressively designed for you to wear at a very big international motocross race that is coming up in October at Redbud. So get your shirts now, get 20% off, and please type in exhaust in all caps. Don't type in pulp, because it is a very tight battle. I had Mathis beat 9-1 on promo code sales, but he's made a comeback. I heard 3 more people have bought shirts with the pulp code. So exhaust. Make us some money. In addition, got to thank our sponsor, Yoshimura. They're the ones backing this pod, and they've got a really cool product that we talked about on here last week. Now, you know that Honda has the new CRF Works Edition 450 bike. There's the regular CRF 450R. There's a Works Edition machine. It comes with a Yoshimura exhaust system. But you can actually upgrade from that upgrade with the new titanium head pipe that Yoshimura has put together. It is designed exclusively for that Works Edition Honda. It only works on the Works Edition Honda. This titanium header is lighter than the stainless steel one that comes on the Works Edition bike, and it produces more power. It was designed to work exclusively with the cylinder head design and the engine mapping that is only on the Works Edition bike. So if you have a Works Edition machine and you want to make it even more work it, go to yoshimura-rd.com and dial up that titanium head pipe. If you're going to buy the best Honda, why not make it the best of the best? So thanks to Yoshimura for hooking us up on these pods, and thanks to Kailub Russell for giving us some time as he was headed to the airport to actually do some frame testing for next year's bikes with KTM. So listen to that, but first listen to podcast. Yeah, that was a fresh version right there. I know one person, an eagle-eyed audio engineer on the Pulp MX staff, will be able to identify the differences between that version of the podcast theme song and others. Good luck, Swisscore. Couple public service announcements right here. This is the bulletin board at Starbucks. A few events coming up now that we're into the off-season that I want to mention. The Racer X main event, September 14th through 16th at MX207 in Maine. Go to mx207.com. Now, we did this last year. Really cool event, a big regional event up in Maine, but we were trying to help revive the idea of actually racing more than 5 times a year, which is what these fast kids do these days. So let's make some other events big. Let's give people an incentive and a reason to want to come out to the racetrack. Now, we're idiots at Racer X. We are not manual labor people. There's not much we can do to make your racetrack better, but we can give you some promotion. So that's what we're doing. I guess the incentive to come and race from the Racer X side is that we're going to cover the event heavily. So you'll get to see your name, your photos. You'll see yourself on video. That's really cool. Plus, I'll be there all day Sunday, race day, hanging out with everyone. So I'll shake as many hands as I can and take some selfies, meaning I will take selfies with you to put on my social media. Sound good? As far as the race itself, big ups to the Stewart family who runs this track and runs this race. They do an awesome job. The track is great. At this time of year, to go racing in September and Maine, the weather is perfect. We had a lot of fun hanging out there last year. And what's really cool is because there's a big purse and because of the exposure, we do get some riders outside of the New England area to challenge the kids and the riders that are fast from the New England area. So it's kind of that old school day you remember at your local track when once or twice a year they had a really big race and riders from other regions came in, and it made for some unforgettable racing and a good test for yourself. So that's the Racer X main event, mx207.com. Check it out. If you're anywhere near Maine on September 14th, 15th, 16th, we'll have practice on Friday the 14th, racing on 15th, 16th. Come and join us. It's going to be awesome. And it's all presented by Unifilters. Thanks to those folks for signing on. And also, if you're looking for a cool off-season event in the middle of the country instead of all the way in the east, our man Wheels, our social media czar for a variety of companies we have here, all tied in with Kailub Russell and his parents and all that, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so Wheels, our social media guy, has put together a Smagical ride day. Now, Smagical, that is Smodgy, the trials rider turned Nitro Circus guy who really wrecked himself in a crash working with Travis Pastrana. I cannot believe that this dude is already up and walking when he probably wasn't ever supposed to be able to do that, and quickly he's already back up, but the medical bills are quite large, so Wheel's going to help him out. He's got Sweeney MX in Missouri to open the doors on Saturday, September 29th. If you pay and sign up to ride, the money goes to the medical expenses for Smagical. So big thanks to Wheels for doing that. Go to roadtorecovery.com. That's recovery.com to sign up or to get more info, or just go to @SweeneyMX, SweeneyMX, and you can follow them on social media, learn more about the track and more about the event. We'll help out Smagical. That'll be a fun one as well. Let me get back to this podcast here. This is Kailub Russell, and we're talking about his Unadilla experience growing up as a off-roader, not a motocrosser. And yes, we get into the entanglements of his dad running the GNCC Series, in which he now dominates. And man, I am cheap, so I can make it a buck go a long way. And if I had $1 for every time I heard someone accuse Kailub of getting an unfair advantage because he knew the track or the rule makers were hooking him up or something like that, I'd be retired because I'd end up with a lot of dollars, and I can make that last. I've heard it over and over. I'm not the type of guy that gets angry very often, but I can tell you one time, there was actually a family that at one point was taking Kailub to and from the races because his dad, as you'll find out here, wasn't ever the moto dad who was doing that. Kailub didn't even live in the same state as his dad, and his dad was busy building these tracks, so he was never home anyway. So eventually, as Kailub was getting better at this, and they knew he needed to go to the races, his dad hired someone else and said, "You take care of it because I'm too busy to do it." So this family knew Kailub's situation quite well. They were very, very well aware that Kailub's dad wasn't actively involved with talking to him on the race weekend because they were literally hired to work on his bike and get him to the starting line at the races because they knew he would not be seeing his dad at all. And even with that information, they started accusing me of giving Kailub excess publicity because the family told me to do it. And that really got me mad because pretty much the only thing that angers me is accusations of bias. I cannot help it. He wins races. We're going to mention his name. And furthermore, Jeff Russell, Kailub's dad, is the most old school, gnarly, hardcore guy I know. He is the stereotypical wake up at 5:30 in the morning in the snow and get out there and get your hands dirty. He never stops working, and no one ever has worked hard enough in his book. So whenever I did ask Jeff how Kailub was doing, he'd always say, he needs to work harder. So it wasn't like he was pampering his guy or pumping him up anyway. In fact, I could never even get Jeff to even say, hey, isn't Kailub awesome? I mean, maybe he says it now that he's reached the top of the mountain, but certainly in those days where people were accusing me of having Jeff tell me to pump his kid up, I can tell you that Jeff wasn't even pumping his kid up. You know how those hardcore dads are. You might even have one yourself. They just work hard. They keep their nose at the grindstone. They don't pump up anything. So now you have the background. Hear it from Kailub's side. Here is our Racer X Exhaust podcast by Yoshimura with Kailub Russell. All right, so you're driving to the airport right now. Why? Are you leaving the Florida dream behind? Are you going back? What is your status right now?
No, I'm in North Carolina. I'm back in North Carolina. I came back home right after Unadilla the week after. Once we kind of decided I wasn't gonna race the next couple of nationals, and I wasn't really in any sort of shape to ride straight away. So I've been down there for like 5 weeks. So I was, ready to come back and get home. I had my wife and kid down there, and we were all just kind of a little down in the dumps about it and just how it turned out. So.
Yeah, and then just to rub it in, man, we threw in another mud race. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, it was those last three, man. They set up, they set up to play into my favor really well. Maybe not so much Budds Creek, but it would have been nice to have a dry race in there and see what I could have done, because I feel like, at the time, like I was riding well enough to, I feel like, to be an 8th to 15th place guy, just depending on how the moto went and start and whatnot. But I gained a lot of experience at Unadilla, so it would have been nice to carry it over into that final race at Ironman and see what I could have done.
Yeah, that's like the biggest bummer, because I'm sure more than anything you were just curious to know how it's going to go, and now the only experience you have is basically one moto in the mud. So I don't know how much you can actually take from that. It's like a weirdo race, so it's hard to say. And I'm sure you're probably still curious to how you would do.
Yeah, no, I am. I feel like there's going to be more in the future. I'm going to push hard to, like I said, I'm headed up to California right now to do some frame testing for next year on an off-road bike. So I'm going to talk to Auntie and see what we can put together and maybe get to a few more next year. But yeah, I'm definitely curious. I think a lot of people are, even maybe so Alden a little bit too. But it's nice training down there with him, because I just continually make improvements. I haven't plateaued yet. I haven't hit a ceiling, so to speak. I'm constantly developing and getting better. So it's frustrating. I think that was the biggest thing with the crash at Unadilla was not being able to continue and seeing what I could do a couple weeks later.
One of the most interesting things I got out of that experience, you were talking to Mathis, and you said how different the bikes are. And then when you were hurt, you kept saying, yeah, it's harder to ride. I'm riding a factory 450, and with a shoulder, I got to respect that. I think everyone assumed, he rides a 350, a 450, it's KTM. What's the difference? But it sounds like that factory 450, that is a big leap over what you normally ride.
I hit a little dead then, I think.
Okay, you want to say that again? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. One of the things that I took from this was the bike is so much different. I think everyone assumes, 350, 450, it's a KTM, it's a factory bike in either series. But it sounds like the factory 450 motocross bike, that was a massive learning curve for you also.
Yeah, I mean, when I got on it, so basically when Alden kind of gave me the okay, hey, I think you can do this, let's put you on the bike and see what you can do. Well, at the time, all they had at the Baker's factory for me to ride was Brock Tickle's spare bike, his practice bike, but it still had the Supercross motor in it.
Wow.
With an outdoor suspension package.
Mm-hmm.
So it was theoretically set up for outdoors, but it still had an SX motor in it. And I hopped on the bike, and I was instantly 6 seconds slower. I could only manage to do a handful of laps on it. I was so super tight, gnarly arm pump that I haven't had in forever since I've had my surgery. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, I can't do this. And Adam was like, yeah, that's enough. We got to figure something out. So I actually hopped on McElrath's practice 450, and I started riding that just to get because the chassis is actually the old chassis, what I was riding, but it had the 52 millimeter fork stiffer suspension and, geared to what I probably would be on if I were to get a different motor. Mm-hmm. And I was actually really good on it, and I improved immediately. I was faster than on my bike, and So then, I took over one of Marvin's practice bikes, and, I just kept chipping away at it and getting better and better. But the bike as a whole is just so much more rigid. The stuff's insane. Like when I hopped on Marvin's suspension, it feels like, to me, like I feel like I could go out and be comfortable on a Supercross track with his Moto setup. So.
And he would say the exact opposite, right? Like he wouldn't touch a Supercross track with that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. I'm probably. I feel like that stuff would work just fine for me at like a Daytona or something. And he's probably like, that's probably too soft for those guys. But
yep.
It's just the level that they ride at, and they're used to riding at, and the way they're used to attacking the track, and that's the biggest difference. Is in the woods, I'm trying to go as fast as I can everywhere, but we're not carrying the same momentum and same speed and hitting the roots and all this at the same. Everything has a different feel.
So when you were down at Alden's the previous 2 summers, what were you actually riding then? It was apparently far from a factory 450 motocross bike.
Yeah, way far. So their very first year I went down, I actually had a 250 and a 350 practice bike at the time, so I took both of them. And I started out on the 250 and then ended up riding the 350 and staying on that. But they were pretty much, it was like a motocross suspension package that we had, but it was, in hindsight, it would be a decent off-road suspension setup for a really rough track, say like Ironman or something with soft dirt that gets some gnarly braking bumps and stuff. But yeah, I still like, our guys like keep making me like Moto setups, and I'm like, oh, just go stiffer, and I get on the 450 bike, and I'm like, whoa, let's go softer.
Yeah.
So.
Compare where you were when you first went to Alden's, and by the way, I heard his side from when you first went to Alden's 2 summers ago. Or I guess 3 years technically now, to where you are now. I'm assuming you're saying you're making huge gains, so I'm assuming you'd put that times 3 years pretty massive.
Yeah, I think so. I thought I was fast and capable of riding some Moto, 2 to 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And, I probably was. I mean, I'm not going to – I mean, there's a lot of guys out there that struggle to make it, and make it into the races. But I probably would have been, like, on the cusp of that, just inside the cut line. Mm-hmm. But the biggest thing was the intensity and the focus and just absolutely just twisting the throttle and, just being super aggressive, like, out of corners. Like, they just nickel and dime me, like, tenths everywhere. And then, now they're only nickel and diming me, scrubbing stuff and in certain spaces. Like, there's a lot of times, like, when we do sections, like, I'm just as fast, if not faster occasionally, and in some instances. But it's really just putting all the pieces together, and it's coming together. But, I'm 28 years old now, and, it's a real bummer I never got into it, back in the day, because like I said, like, I haven't hit a plateau, I haven't hit my ceiling, and if I could have taken the same sort of drive and mentality I have to what I do in the motocross, I feel, maybe it wouldn't turn out the way it is now, but, I still feel like I'd be pretty good.
Yeah, I don't remember you having much of a moto background. Like, I remember seeing you show up at a local, like, Steel City every once in a while, but did you race a lot of moto, like, in your mini cycle days or anything like that?
No, not really. When I first started riding, I rode a little bit of moto, but that was like on PWs and just kind of getting around the tracks and riding, because my grandpa owned a motocross track. And but the only time I would race or ride moto was at my grandpa's or High Point or Steel City, the races my dad worked at, and they promoted the event. So those were the only ones I was really even allowed to go, because my mom wouldn't take me motocross racing, and she wouldn't let me go race motocross or ride motocross. And I actually qualified for Loretta's, or for the regional, and my mom wouldn't let me go. So she was really she was a motocross Nazi, I guess, back in the late 90s when I was a kid. But I didn't really start riding a lot of motocross until I moved down south, and there was more tracks like readily available to go practice at. And it just kind of, just have fun, go ride and train and do stuff. But I can't say I didn't start getting fast on a motocross track until probably around 2010 10, 11, right in there. So.
How much?
And then I haven't really been riding, I haven't really been riding at like an elite level at motocross, except for like the last year and a half, I would say. So.
Wow, that's a small window. Do you think it helps? Those tents out of the corners and stuff. The corners aren't the same in the woods. So is this helping when you get back to your regular day job?
Yeah, for sure it does. I mean, that was kind of the whole recipe to go down to outings and see what I could do. And the biggest thing I take away from outings is just the intensity. And when I come back, to racing off-road, not to, put the off-road guys down or anything, but I've been riding with Marvin Muscan and Jason Anderson and, top 450 motocross superstars. And I go back to woods racing and I'm like, I know where I am against those guys. It's like, I know none of these guys are going to beat me. Like, I just have, not in a cocky way, but I just take that confidence over, and it's just, I just ride with, to my full ability. Like, it seems like I use, everything I learned from those 30-minute motos that we do, like the first 30 minutes. I remember the very first year, very first race back from when I went to Outings, the very first time, I had a 45-second lead on the first lap. Just out of nowhere, just absolutely murdered everybody and just cruised the rest of the race.
Wow.
It just builds that sort of confidence into you, and instills it that, it's like, hey, I'm this close to these guys. I don't know. I'm not very good at giving that good example without kind of putting guys down, which I don't want to do. Or brings a whole new level of confidence to the table.
Yeah, and you're in a tricky spot here because, right, you don't want to appear cocky. But, look, that's half the reason that people put in work. It's not just a physical thing. It is for confidence. So I think it's fair to say that if it makes you feel like you're better, that's half the battle of why you would put in that kind of work. So, you're stuck in a rock and a hard place. You don't want to say it, but internally you have to think that. Like, that's the whole reason you put in that kind of work, to know it's paying off. So, yeah, you're in a rock and a hard place there to not sound cocky.
Yeah, for sure. Because I remember going to Unadilla back in, I think it was 2016. I remember lining up, and me and Strang were really close in the championship points chase.
Yeah.
I think I just had like a slight edge on him, and I absolutely destroyed him the last, I only had like a handful of points. I ended up winning. I just broke him mentally at Unadilla. Like, I put 45 seconds on him in the first lap. And actually, almost, I think I started like dead last too, and I was in the lead by like a mile. And like I said, that's the shortest course of the year, and to have 45-second lead on the lap one is pretty impressive.
What's the reception? I was amazed actually down there at Unadilla for this national here. Like, you're like in the group. Like, Kenny Roxon walks up and like says, "Hey, good luck," and all this, and everybody's joking around when it started to rain. I feel like you're for off-road racing in general, it's a good thing that like you're respected clearly as much as they respect the guys that race motocross and supercross. So that seems like a pretty cool thing. It seems like they took you in, not like, who's this guy that races second tier?
I don't get it either. I don't know. I guess I'm just, Chandler and Ken's wife are friends, and, I've hung out with Ken, the last several years and got to know him. And,
yep.
I'm good friends with Cooper Webb and Nicoletti up here, and, I'm a friendly guy with all those guys. I know they're not really friends together, so to say, because they're competitors. But I feel like I can be friends with all of them, and they all seem to really like riding with me and enjoy hanging out. But yeah, I don't know. It's really weird. Like they do take me in and like are kind of talking me up and like because I went to dinner with Cooper Webb. I think the week before he came down to Florida to check out Alden, and I went to dinner with him, and I was like, man, I'm like so nervous, kind of freaking out. He's like, dude, you're gonna be just fine. He's like, you'll be all right. He's like, them top 10 guys are really good. He's like, but if you get a good start, he's like, I feel like you can be like 10th to 15th pretty easily. But he's just talking me up, like helping me out. But I was like, man, it means a lot, to hear that coming from those guys, like because they know kind of what it takes to do that, and so if they can kind of see that in somebody, because I don't know what I got or what it takes, because I've never done it before, so I'm just kind of clueless, like hoping I got it. But
were you at all worried when you first went to Eldon's a couple years ago? Were you, like, when you're driving down there, are you like, are these guys going to think I'm any good at all? Are these guys going to have any respect? Because you're from such a foreign thing that they probably haven't. I don't even know if those guys have even been to a race you've been in. Were you a little worried, like, are these guys even going to have respect for me at all? Were you worried about that?
You know what? I'm not the type of person. I don't feel like I'm the type of person to worry about those types of things. Because I didn't really know. Let's see who was down there at the time. It was Dungy,
Yep.
Henderson, and Marvin was down there at the time when I first went down. I never really kind of thought about that, to be honest with you. I didn't want to make myself look like an idiot by any means, but I was just, there to do me, and I think they kind of respected that in a sense, more or less, as not being maybe super intimidated, but not being like starstruck around them and, just nagging questions or whatnot. Maybe that's why those guys like me so much, because I'm just like a normal person to them, I'm not like, but yeah, I don't know. It was definitely intimidating a little bit. It took me a few weeks to get up to speed and even be able to finish Moto strong down there. The heat's insane, and then, you're riding with the best in the world, and you're trying to go as hard as you can the entire time, so.
Yeah. You know what, though? As much as this has improved you, and you mentioned the very first race after you went to Eldon's, at the same time, like Thad Duvall has stepped up, I mean, you've had some gnarly battles the last year or so. You guys have been at each other's throats. So if you didn't do all this, would you be in some trouble right now? Is this the level you needed to go to, even in your own series? Because it's been close.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if the level would be where it's at if I didn't go to Eldon's either,
Yep.
Because I was still always kind of the guy to beat. So
right.
Who knows where it'd be? I know those guys have all stepped up and like started challenging, getting closer.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we would all be pushing as hard now if that would have never really happened. So we'd all. I think it's kind of starting to level off a little bit, and kind of revert back to maybe the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
In my eyes, what I feel like off-road racing, where we kind of, because I remember like right when a couple years ago, right when I kind of started elevating things and like I'd have those big leads on the first laps, like I'd push really hard just to try to get away.
Yeah.
But now I know there's not very many races where I think I can get away at the beginning, so I actually push like that hard. I push hard enough to get away from a few guys. And if I can't get away from anybody, then I just kind of cruise and just try to wear them down. So I've almost started like reversing my mentality a little bit.
Well, let me say thank God, because the racing in the early 2000s when I was first covering that series was awesome, because I was so used to motocross and supercross races where the start and the first lap meant everything. And I love that off-road racing was like, nah, it's a chess game. They're feeling each other out. The first hour, you just wait. The racing's going to keep getting better and better. So I'm pumped, actually, to hear that it's kind of going back to that, where you get down to that last lap, and that's where the actual action is. So I'm pumped to hear that. Thanks for using that strategy. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like, and I don't have like any sort of, like I've talked to Auntie about this. He's like, so what's the game plan? I have sort of like a game plan in my mind, like what I want to do, but I'm very adaptive. Like I just kind of roll with the punches and take it as it comes. So I just develop my game plan on the fly. Like it's always evolving, and I think that's my racecraft is what has allowed me to win so many races in GNCC. I'm just very good at managing myself, and actually sometimes the outcome of the race just by knowing what being able to predict my competition in certain times. So I feel like, that's the biggest key to off-road. And that's another thing, like motocross. And like, that's why I haven't really excelled like national enduros, just because there's no, the racing aspect isn't there. It's just start and go through tight woods as fast as you can. And you don't ever really know where you're at. So.
Well, you say that, but, you did win the Enduro title one year, and I think you're the first guy that ever won the Enduro title and the GNCC title in the same year. To me, that kind of validated it, and we'll get to this in a moment, but there's always that specter of, oh, he dominates the series where his dad works, and I'll let you talk about that in a minute. But I feel like when you won that Enduro title, to me, I'm like, yeah, see, he's good at everything, but you still don't actually feel like you're quite as good, even though you win a lot of Enduros and you won the title. It's not quite the same for you?
Yeah, I didn't have the same feeling. Like I didn't have the same, dominance, per se. I didn't have the same mindset. I knew I wasn't going to just like kill everybody every race in that series, just because there's no racecraft involved with it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to judge your competitors throughout the day and see, in a GNCC, Stuart Baylor just, it's big buck. He gets a good start. He's up there and he's hauling ass like he normally does. And, I don't feel like I'm as fast as him, so I'm going to let him by and I'm just going to key off of him. I'm going to figure out where he's faster. And then, the fourth lap, I got everything figured out, and I'm going to put the pass back on him, and I'm going to go really hard where I feel like he's the weakest at on the track, and then I'm going to go really hard where I feel like he's good to keep the gap the same. It's all playing mental games and just strategizing and figuring out what works where. Like I said, I feel like that's why I've been so good at this sport for the last 6 years now. So.
Yeah, so Enduro, for people that don't realize, you're just basically on the stopwatch. So you're never really keying off of other guys or watching them or seeing what they do, I guess, right? Is that part of it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, exactly. And like I said, I've won so many GNCCs by not ever being the fastest guy on the track,
mm-hmm.
like at every race. Like there's a lot of times where I was like the fastest guy that day, but I've outsmarted a lot of people and got a lot of wins that way. So you can't really use the same mentality in other series. I get some wins here and there, but and then Enduros, and I did win the championship. But I mean, if you ask, if you go ask anybody, like, how many championships I have, they're going to say 5. That nobody remembers the Enduro championship. Nobody remembers my Sprint Enduro championship. Nobody remembers XC2 days, and I'm a 5-time champion. That's what people follow GNCC.
Well, on that note, this Moto thing I'm sure has done a lot for your profile, because whether it was a mud race or not, obviously you rode well, and I think there's big respect for that. Have you ever felt a little pressure to be like, I want to prove either to myself or to fans or to my sponsors that I can do it elsewhere? Because that is the main thing you're known for, this one particular series. So have you ever put pressure on yourself to be like, I got to go out there and win something else or prove myself as something else?
From sponsors and stuff, I don't feel like, especially from KTM,
yep.
I think their main focus for me is obviously to continue winning GNCCs. Because that's the biggest off-road series in America.
Yep.
And so that's always been the main focus. Mm-hmm. Yes, they want me to do well and whatever else I do.
Yep.
There is a little bit of pressure to perform elsewhere, but it's understandable to focus solely. Main focus, big picture is GNCC for me. But as far as like myself goes, like I've wanted to, and I think that's why I raced the Enduros last year, or not last year, but in 2015, and I did I raced 3 series in 2015, and I won all 3 of them.
Yep.
So. I feel like I proved myself, but people always forget. They forget I'm a Enduro champion, a Sprint Enduro champion. Top 3 overall at 6 days, and on the winning, first winning IFD overall champion
yep.
Team. So people just forget about that stuff. They just find that if they want to complain about something, they complain about the easiest thing there is to complain about, and that's me and my family and racing GNCCs, and that's their excuse. But it's just the world we live in with social media, and everybody thinks their opinion matters, and they can put it out there without any sort of repercussion. So.
Yeah, I'm going to sound biased because I'm going to defend you here. But look, like I worked for the company and I was full-time GNCC guy for like 12 years. So I saw the whole situation like up close. And what most people probably don't realize is it'd be easy to say his dad builds the tracks, he wins. But what I don't think anyone knows is you didn't have the typical dad situation like most people think of racing. Usually it's the dad builds the bikes, brings it to the track, takes it to practice during the week, takes it to the starting line. Like I felt like you and your dad were. I never saw you together on the weekends. First of all, he's building the track, so he's there way before anybody else is. And second, and I don't want to dive too deep into your domestic situation, but your mom and dad lived in 2 different states, so I feel like you didn't have the thing with your dad that most people probably assume happened. you weren't with your dad 24/7 like most kids that race are, as far as I could tell. Is that right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I grew up, obviously I got into riding motorcycles because my dad did.
Yeah.
And, like most kids, they want to be like their father.
Yep.
But, I mean, our relationship, as father and son is, anything but, perfect. And, I would say the older we've got, or the, older I've gotten, the more, we probably talk more now than we ever have.
Mm-hmm.
And especially growing up, like, it just, I went to my dad's probably, like, I honestly can't remember going to his house a lot as a kid growing up. I remember staying there in the summers
mm-hmm.
and, going to my grandparents a lot because they were only an hour away. But I grew up like 4 hours away from my dad, so it wasn't like we were together every day. And, like, even when I was a youth rider, I didn't even start racing GNCCs until, like, 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't even very good. Like, I just rode because it was fun. But growing up as a kid, like, I had never envisioned myself doing anything else. I just always knew I was going to race motorcycles for a living, like, ever since I got into it. Like, it's weird to say that now, but I never let anything kind of deter my vision of what I was going to do. Like, I did never have it put into realization until my dad kind of stepped in. I was going through, I did move to his house in high school.
Yeah.
I lived with him for a year, and, I was skipping school and just doing normal kid stuff and, like, losing focus. And, like, he put it into perspective. He's like, hey, dude, you're going to be 18 next year. I'm done paying for you. I'm done. You got to, if you want it and you want to do this, you're becoming an adult. You got to make it happen. And, that's what I did. I made it happen. I moved away right at 18 and moved to North Carolina with my girlfriend. And, yeah, I mean, the rest is kind of history now. But, like I said, my dad and I, I think my dad, my brothers, my sisters, we have that side of the family, I think we have a better relationship now than, even when I was growing up. But yeah, it was never, he's never really been there for me on the starting line. It's, he's never really been like, he's always been there for me, kind of standing in the shadows, so to speak. But publicly and visually, like, he's never really there for the races. He's not at the races for me by any means.
Yeah, so basically what you're saying is your whole riding career, you basically lived with your dad 1 year out of all of the time that you've been a racer, or close to that, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not, I'm sure most people, they know how gnarly mini bike dads are. Father and son are never apart for more than 5 minutes. Your situation was just different. And what also people probably don't know is the lengths your dad has to go to on Sunday to keep the racing to appear fair. I mean, I know that he's not even talking to you, but yeah, he's had to hire other people to be the track guys on Sunday just so people don't say that he's doing stuff. It's been crazy, the lengths that you have to go to.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, in the last, several years, he's getting older and he's had his hip replaced and stuff too. So he's just now this year starting to kind of get back out into the woods and doing some, track maintenance type stuff during the races, putting the banners back up when they get knocked down, arrow in the course and stuff. But, the last several years, he hasn't really been in the woods at all.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of, he's got, Eccles and Bolt On, and those guys handle all the tracks, and, they're doing their job. And, he's mainly, he lays out the pits nowadays and stays out of the woods. But, yeah, it's definitely tough. Like last year, I went through, battling with that. He's got his family and a lot of friends and fans that are really on the train of knocking KR down. But, yeah, it was tough last year, mentally and physically. I was ready to be done with it. I didn't feel like what I was doing was appreciated by a lot of people, and what I brought to the table was, being they were tarnishing my image pretty well. So by throwing this back in the mix, I thought we were kind of past the point and over it. But it's still there. People always hound me about it. Like, you'll not directly, like, nobody's ever got the balls to come up to your face and talk to you about it. It's always keyboard warriors, but it's such a small community, and for people to continually throw this out there is just absurd to me. Especially someone as close as, like, Thad and them, their family. Like, it kind of bugs me that they wouldn't step in and, tell his fans or whatever, just because we're such a close-knit group. And I kind of grew up racing with Thad. He knows my situation, and he knows my family well. So I just found it disrespectful.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and not specifically with Thad, but I do remember through the years other families who knew you really well saying that, and I'm like, of all people, you guys know as well as anyone that he and his dad aren't riding during the week, or he's not here when their dad builds the track. This is not Thad, but this is other families through the mini cycle ranks, and I'm like, you guys know all the facts. In fact, there was one family, I remember your dad even had to have people bring you to the races because he couldn't do it, and I'm like, you're the one taking Kailub to the race, so you know exactly what his schedule is. You guys are insane. And I did think that once you reach the top of the mountain and you won the title, I feel like once you win enough, people are like, well, I guess everything's, he's just good. But you're right, it doesn't take much for it to flare back up. It's been
it takes nothing at all. It's one little hiccup, and it's all back out on the table and wide open again. But that, like I said, it's just the day and age we live in with social media and no repercussion of people's actions. But it's all over the place.
I was bummed for your dad that he wasn't at Unadilla for the Motocross National because he was busy building the ATV race down at Loretta's. And I was like, all right, maybe one of these weekends he's finally going to be able to just be a moto dad like the rest of them and just be there because his son is racing instead of working or going to another track altogether. So were you looking forward to that? Like if you had race buds or maybe Indiana, you actually might have gotten that because he wasn't at Unadilla.
Yeah, I know. He was still at Loretta's with the Quad National, but I do wish I could have made it to Ironman and raced. I feel like it would have been a really good day for me.
Yep.
Especially take a little bit more experience in the race and kind of knowing where I stand when the conditions are like that. I feel like I would have been able to perform maybe a little bit better just by knowing where I can and what I could do, but yeah, the only races my dad goes to me with as a support guy and, there as a father and, to cheer me on is 6 days. That's so throughout my 20 plus years of racing, besides when I was, real young, him taking me to off-road races and local stuff, through my professional career, the IFD is the only races where he's ever been there as to support my racing visually.
Yeah. Now I know that you coming in and doing well at this race at Unadilla and maybe more in the future, that definitely helps the respect level for GNCC in general, and it's cool to see Roxon and Marvin and Dungy and all those guys have respect for you. And then the other side is that Aaron Plessinger is all of a sudden turned into this superstar on the moto side, and he references GNCC every week. But the strange thing is, have you two ever raced each other? I don't remember it ever happening. Did you two ever race? You and Aaron?
No, we've never raced. He's a little younger than me.
Right.
I think, what is Aaron, 23, 24?
I think so. I think 23, right. Yep.
But yeah, I've known Aaron for a long time. I remember, always remember Aaron as a motocrosser, but he did race GNCC here and there. I remember he got more into racing GNCC because he was always getting hurt, especially when he went up to the schoolboy class on 125s. I remember him just being all banged up all the time, and his dad drug him out to the GNCCs, and he started racing more. I think him and Grant Baylor had some hellacious battles in 250. I can't remember if Aaron ended up beating him one year for the title in that or not.
Yeah. But, I do remember them battling all the time. I almost felt bad for Grant because, Aaron, when he would show up when he wasn't hurt, was, ridiculous fast. But you just never knew. Actually, it's kind of the way he is now. You never knew what you were going to get. So there were some years where Grant, I'm like, dude, I don't know what you're supposed to do against this guy. But then other weeks he wouldn't even be there. I don't even know if he ever won a title. It feels like he was always in and out. Never full on.
Yeah, he definitely was. But, I remember him. Yeah, and then he raced XC2 for a little bit. And I remember him actually winning an XC2 race. He passed Jason Thomas in, the second to last corner or something at Steel Creek. But I think that was, his last GNCC ever did was at Steel Creek.
So you never raced each other? Wow.
I think maybe 2011 that was, or something like that.
Yeah, and I remember he was pretty much full moto guy working with Matt Walker, I think, at that point. So you've never raced each other. That's so weird. But you're friends? Do you see each other ever anymore?
Yeah, I've seen him. I've probably seen him more this year than I have in the last few bits because I went to I think the Vegas Supercross, I was there, and then, chatted with him here and there. But, seen him at High Point, obviously, and then this past weekend, or at Butts Creek and Unadilla. But, yeah, I know we're always friendly. I know his dad always comes up and talks to me. And then Ethan Yautis, his man friend that's always hanging out with him, he used to hang around and ride with me back in the day. So we all kind of are in the same little group of friends, too, I guess.
Well, it's really weird because, how far apart were you guys in Ohio when you grew up? Not that far, I wouldn't think, right? Similar area?
Yeah, probably not. But, when I was in Ohio, I hardly ever rode. I rode, when I did ride, it was my mom and my dad, or my mom and my stepdad, we had, a 10-acre piece of land, and, I would kind of ride the woods behind the house, and I was only allowed to ride in certain spots, so.
I see.
Yeah, I didn't do a whole lot of riding back in the day.
Oh, so it's not like you even saw each other then, at the locals or something like that? No.
Yeah, no, because I don't ever remember him doing any local hair scrambles. I'm sure he did. Here and there, but I just don't remember. I don't remember a whole lot of my local racing stuff because, like I said, it's been so long, and I didn't do a whole lot of it. I wasn't very consistent with it back then until about 2000, 2001. So.
Well, what I'm getting at is it's funny that Thad's technically from West Virginia, but not too far from Ohio. You're from Ohio. Plessinger's from Ohio. Walker Fowler, who's the dominant quad guy now, but most people don't remember he actually came up racing dirt bikes in GNCC. He's from Ohio. Corey Buttrick, who you used to battle with as a youth guy, he's from Ohio. It seems like all of you guys, all the talent that emerged, all came from a 2 or 3 hour radius. That's so weird.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Ohio's got some deep talent. Charlie Mullins.
Yep, that's right.
Dude, there's a lot of talent that came out of Ohio, for sure.
It's weird. So you and Aaron, are you going to race someday? He's kicking around the idea of doing Ironman. We'll see what happens. You didn't race 250 class at Unadilla, so it still has never happened.
Yeah, I know. No, it'd be fun. I think I know there's a few Moto guys that are wanting to do Ironman. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but
right.
Several of them have said they want to do it, or their bosses want them to do it or something. But which I thought was weird. But I know Tyler Keefe wants McElrath to race Ironman, but I'm not sure. So that'd be cool. I mean, I feel like all those guys should at least do one in their life, just to just to see what it's all about and to do it. I'm sure a lot of them will, after their motocross career is done, maybe try one out. I know Jeff Emming's done one before back in the day, and Pastrana. There's been a lot of guys. So, I feel like they're obviously they've got enough skill where they'd be just fine. They do well, for a little bit, but it takes a lot of experience to really nail down GNCC. Because I mean, look at Sykes. He's been trying to do it for 4 years now and got one win, which is actually pretty impressive too. So. Yeah,
and then let's not forget your guy Zacho. I think it's dangerous for you and Zacho to be near each other in Florida because you're going to drag him into the woods. I'm afraid he wants to do this so bad. They shouldn't even allow you near him.
I think it's he shouldn't be allowed near me. I think
that's what I mean. You're going to infect him.
Yeah, I know. It's more like the other way around. Him infecting me. Every time I'm around him, he's talking about all this different types of racing he wants to do, and the car and this and that. I was like, dude, you just ate up with dirt bikes. I love bikes too, but I like motocross and off road, and I don't pay a whole lot of attention to the car and all this. He's getting a freaking a rally bike. And to ride around and check it out and get into that, but I don't know. He's just ate up in it. He just loves it. He wants to race whatever he can, and he wants to do it now,
Oh, so you're not even the bad influence. You're only a tiny bit. Then he's got all these other pieces that he wants to break off too. I didn't realize this. Oh man.
Yeah, no. He's just infatuated with just dirt bikes and motorcycles in general, but I think we all are to some point, but he just I feel overboard with it in a way. He just wants to race, wants to do all these other races and not have any sort of break and stuff, from what I feel like. But I give him a hard time all the time. When he starts bringing it up, I was like, man, just chill out on the motorcycle, dude.
Yeah, I've talked to him quite a bit. I think he's a unique case because he had this moment where his career and making a living at this was almost over. And you know who else had the same thing? Like Mike Brown always tells people famously that for 6 months he got a regular job. And then once he did that, it is like the fire will never, ever, ever burn out. So those guys are unique cases.
Still haven't.
No. And you know Brown well. Like, you had to race him, and he's been on 6 days. Like, that guy's the same way. Like, the fire will never go out with some of these dudes. It's crazy.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for Mike. He's a gnarly guy, and to still be doing it. Like, I know he's not, like, focused on any sort of series, but he's always, like, every time I turn around, like, he's at some, race overseas or Canada, freaking wherever, just, like, every other week. Like, he's somewhere else. I'm like, dude, like, you've been doing it for so long. Like, how do you still have the drive to, like, want to go to the airport and fly away? Like,
Right. So what about you here? Like, you're obviously still in it this year. You're leading the points again. This year seems like you're as into it as ever. I mean, do you have any idea? Like, are you feeling the flame burning out a little bit, or is this motocross thing rejuvenated you? Where are you at on your timeline right now?
yeah, I don't know. Like, if you would have asked me last year, I would have told you it's almost over.
Really?
I think the light was burning out. But
Wow.
yeah, like I was mentally I was in a dark place last year. I just, like I said, there was a lot of drama and, a lot of pointing fingers. I just didn't feel like I felt like I've already proved myself. I didn't need to keep proving myself. And, like I said, things snowballed and got, like, been out of shape. And it's just like nobody appreciated what I could bring to the table. And, I was to the point where, I don't do this. I do this for me, and nobody really, I guess, could see that at the time or whatever, but I don't know. Maybe I was, I don't really know what brought it on, but, I feel like I did get, had a little time off, rejuvenated, and I feel like there's a little bit of spark. I've started doing a series out west.
Yep.
And, that helped out to, just bring a little bit of variety to the table, and especially the motocross things. Like, that's something, I grew up watching motocross, and I always dreamed to do it. And like I said, like when I was younger, I always knew I was going to race dirt bikes professionally. I didn't know what at, but really I always wanted to do, like, race motocross and Supercross. But, now that I actually feel like I'm at the, I'm at the elite, kind of almost to the elite level to be competitive with a lot of top name guys. Like, that's pretty exciting for me. So.
Yeah. So that I'm sure that does help. Plus, again, when you get pats on the back from Kenny and Marvin and all those guys, that probably is, helps the ego a little bit too, helps you feel better and not want to just, go hide in the hinterlands. But so now you don't know. You could be out this for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell. Like, it's racing and it's volatile, and like I said, it's a cruel world out there. But I just try to take it year by year and day by day and figure it out, and just kind of treat my career like I treat GNCCs and racing. Just go with the punches, roll with and figure it out on the fly. So I'm going to be with KTM for a long time. Like, if I am racing, so I'm kind of locked into that. But hopefully we can get to some more outdoors. Like I said, that was really fun for me, and without being at his place, like, I feel like I've got a lot more to give. I feel like there's a lot more in the tank, and I don't want to retire before knowing what I can do in motocross. I feel like too.
Well, I'm just glad that when you went down, my worst nightmare when you crashed there was, oh no, now they're going to tell him never again. And by the way, every other off-road rider, also you folks, never again, never do this again. Like, I was afraid it was going to ruin everything, but KTM is actually cool about this. Like, they're going to let you do it again when you're ready.
I mean, I can't say for sure that they're going to let me do it again.
Oh, okay.
But I'm gonna push hard for it.
All right.
Like I said, I've just been pecking on the door the whole time, and finally I got my shot, my opportunity, and it kind of went sour on me that second Moto. But I'm gonna keep pecking and keep asking, and all they can say is no. So, I feel like as good as as much much as I showed at Unadilla, speed-wise and qualifying and stuff, like, I think I surprised a lot of guys, or a lot of people, like, within the team and everything. Like, I had a lot of people text me like, "Whoa, dude, I didn't know you could do that." So.
Right. Yeah, that's a good vote for you. And you're not super busted up, right? Like you told me, if you had to race at GNCC for points, you could have just gone out there the next weekend. You're not like super hurt, right?
Yeah, totally. And like I got a lot of flack for kind of being a pussy and not racing, which I'm usually the farthest thing away from a pussy that there is. When it comes to race, I've raced an entire year with a broken kneecap and raced 4 races with a blown out ACL. So
yeah,
I just realized like I showed such good speed and such good quality at Unadilla. I didn't want to try to ride against those guys that I'm not faster than at 60%, and I wasn't going to be able to ride that week anyway. So the time on the bike down at Outings, like if I miss that, like it's so hard for me to go that speed.
Yeah.
When I'm 100%.
Yeah.
So if I miss a couple of days, like that's a lot of rust on that bike. That's I've never really ridden before and have experience on that stiff of a chassis. So things start happening quick when you're on that bike. And like I said, talking to Outings, it just really wasn't worth it at that point. So like I said, if I had to race at GNCC, I feel like I would have been just fine. I wasn't I wasn't hurt. I was just banged up and sore.
Yeah.
And I started riding like last Monday, and it was definitely tough. Like there's a lot of things. I rode on a motocross track on my bike, and it was actually pretty tough for me for the first like 5-10 minutes. So.
That crash at Unadilla, was that partially because of the rear brake? I know you lost your rear brake when Barsha hit you. Was that part of the reason you crashed, or was it just a crash?
Yeah, I think, hindsight's 2020. I feel like if I didn't hit Barsha the first time, that crash never happened.
Right.
I believe.
Yes.
But, it was one of those things where that section was tricky, and I came over that little knoll, like, what you don't realize, like, watching, unless you're riding the bike.
Yep.
Like, it's hard to see the line coming over that knoll to hit that. There's one tiny little rut that was dry on the inside, and we were all taking that.
Yeah.
And I got off of it by 2 inches, and I was trying to get back to the dry stuff, and just out of nowhere, like there was no time. Like I didn't even know. Most of the time when you're crashing, you're getting ready to crash or something's getting ready to happen. Like there was no instinct. It was just boom, just on the ground. Like there's no reaction to try to save it or do anything. So it was just one of those things. It is what it is. I mean, it's a motorcycle race, and sometimes shit like that happens. It's just tough to save all of them, especially when they're on. And the next second I'm on the ground. So.
How in the hell did you get that good a start in the second moto? Because I have no idea what he's going to do, but I can guarantee the hardest part would probably be going off a gate because he hasn't even done a full gate start in 10 years. How the hell did you get such a good start? My mind was blown that you were in third or fourth. How'd you do that?
I got sixth the first moto, man. I knew where I stood. Like
wow.
I knew where I stood against those guys. Like it's a confidence thing.
Really?
Like I read a comment the other day somewhere on Racer X, and a guy said for every 30 minutes these guys ride, they should do 10 to 15 minutes.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
And I was like, well, what fucking sense does that make? Okay.
Well,
so if all 40 guys practice, which they already do,
yes.
practice, 15 minutes, like you're still going to have the same guys at the front. Like it's not going to take a 40th place guy and make him a hole shotter every race. Like.
Well, you can only have 5 guys in the top 5, no matter how many practice starts everybody does. Only 5 guys can be in the top 5.
Exactly.
So it made no sense.
But I seen that. I was like, that makes no sense at all.
No.
But no, like I had the confidence. I knew where I kind of belonged at that point. So I felt like, that helps out a lot. Like when you have confidence, like, you just make it happen. I feel like.
So it's not even a physical timing, gate, clutch release thing. It's so mental that you get a boost like that good first moto, and it makes a huge difference in your start.
Yeah, I just know how it is for me. Like in my whole racing career, once you get that confidence, like that sense of belonging, you just know how to make it happen, and it just kind of comes naturally, and it always has to be. But I didn't get a great start, but I kind of made it work on the inside because that right-hander is a little unforgiving to people on the outside, so I had a good gate pick.
Yep.
So, and I started I had a great jump and everything. I was up there, but I just cut underneath, and then I cut underneath again, and there I was in third. So I was like, sweet.
How easy was it for you to relax in that situation? Like, I would think you'd be a little wide-eyed, like, here we go, I'm right at the front. Or were you, because of the first moto, were you able to deal with that? Because I would think that's a lot coming at you at one time to start in basically third in this moto.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot. Like I remember thinking to myself, we kind of dropped underneath that tunnel right before Gravity Cavity and hit that double.
Yep.
We hit that big double. I remember I had Tomac right to my left, and I took a big deep breath. I was like, man, this is so sick. I was like, just be smooth this first lap, don't go down. And Barsha passed me exiting Gravity Cavity, and he was just off the red limiter every which way. I was like, dude, he's going down this lap. Because it's so hard to ride those conditions when it's muddy like that, just wide open that opening lap. Because when they back drag, when they some of the ruts, like you don't know where the soft spots are. And I think that's ultimately what ended up making him crash. He just hit that soft spot and got sideways and just kind of, handful of throttle on those 450s is not a good recipe.
No, and you were in the wrong place there at the wrong time. All right, my last thing, when you were running third in the first moto, have you run that back in your mind like 9 million times, thinking about that, I don't know, it was a couple laps, I think, or you're in podium position. Have you thought back to that like, ooh, I could have been on the podium? You flash back to that?
Oh, yeah, I do.
I'd imagine.
I do.
I imagine.
It's frustrating. Yeah, I think it was like 2 laps or something. I seen it.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I didn't really believe it. Like I think I thought I read it wrong.
Yeah.
And I remember the next time I came around and it still said it. I was like, holy shit! I just remember thinking, holy shit in my head. I was like, what am I doing? And I crashed like right before the finish line. I crashed like Savachi did.
Yeah.
And I went immediately back to 5th, and then I fell over in the next corner because my gloves are so muddy. I just couldn't hold on to my bike, and I think that's where Bloss got back around me at. But I was like, at the end of the day, I came back. I fell down twice and got 6th, and I was up there. Like that meant the world to me. Like being riding in third, like riding my way into third too. I know those guys stop for goggles and pit stops, but I started I remember looking at myself on the opening lap on TV, and I was like around 12th or 11th.
Yeah.
So I worked my way up, but I was pretty pumped with that.
All right, next time you do one of these, tell your mechanic, don't put it on the board if you're doing really well. Just go with lap times. Let's just skip the third place part.
Yeah. No, it was pretty surreal and unbelievable, like to be up there and to do that. That was, I can't help but to think, the last couple races I especially Ironman and Unadilla, I feel like I could have been 5th or 6th overall at Unadilla, and then who knows what would have happened at Ironman. I wasn't there, so I can't really say, but
right.
I feel like I've blown 2 really good shots.
Well, but the goal, I'm sure, all along is to really test yourself in their conditions, not yours. So, it wasn't that you were planning on poaching a couple mud races and kicking them when they're down. The real goal is to see how you can do in their environment, right? Yep.
Yeah, for sure it is. And, it was just, like I said, the mud just only enhanced my abilities and the day and how it went. Because even looking at, the 250 times, I think my qualifying time was actually faster than AP's, too. So I qualified 12th in the 450 class, and I would have been right there around 10th, 11th in the 250 class, too. So that's, pretty good company, I feel like. So.
Yeah, it's what you got to go with now until you get to do another one. So hopefully that happens. I'll put in any vote that I possibly can because I really think it was exciting. Like, people were into it. No one knew what to expect, but at least there was enough respect, I think, where it got some buzz. Not like, who's this guy? Like, I was really impressed with the other riders in the pits. And, we did an interview with you on TV, but that wasn't my call. I mean, that was just our producer, Chris Bond, is like, well, this is a cool deal. So I think there'll be enough people hopefully rallying that want to see it again. So let's hope so next year. Yep. Yeah, I mean, it was insane the amount of publicity I got. Like, I was really that put a lot of pressure on me and just made the whole day a little bit nerve wracking because I had all these people curious and wondering and
telling me I could do it and this and that. Like, just a lot of unknown, for myself in my very first race. But yeah, it was cool. Like, all the publicity. Like, I could race. I could win a. People are going to remember that longer than they know that I won a national enduro championship.
There you go. Oh, and Bob, by the way, when it rained, that probably only made it worse. Even more people pumping you up.
Yeah, for sure. No, it definitely was. But like I said, yeah, that second moto, like I at that point, I kind of knew where I stood against a lot of the guys.
Yeah.
And knew my capabilities on the day, and I was definitely prepared to go for it, but it just didn't work out.
So that's our show with Kailub Russell. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope I doth not protest too much. I just feel like he's gotten a raw deal over the years through that family thing, and maybe I'm a little sensitive to it because I was probably accused of it myself here and there. I hope this podcast proves that I'm just trying to put everything out in the open. Also, very much out in the open, Yoshimura is the presenting sponsor of this exhaust podcast. Check them out, yoshimura-rd.com. They've got an exhaust system for your dirt bike, your street bike, your ATV. Really cool products for the Honda, as we're talking about. The Works Edition Honda that comes with the Yosh pipe. An even better one is available. All titanium, but they've got exhaust products for all the motocross bikes. So check them out if you're looking for something cool to hang off the back of your bike and make it go faster, sound better, and way less. Meanwhile, another off-season event. This one's going to be awesome. You already know all about the Monster Energy Cup. That's not a small off-season event. That is a big one taking place in Las Vegas, as always, in October. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a big event. The event is October 13th, Monster Energy Cup. On Friday, October 12th, we're going to have a live show, which will turn into a podcast. But we'll record this one live in front of a studio audience. You can be part of the audience, so buy tickets. Go to thespacelv.com and you can buy tickets to the event. And it'll be myself, Matt, this JT. Now I think we're going to try to get Ping on board. We try to leave Ping alone. Ping's busy. Ping has a real job saving lives out in California. So we try not to drag him into too many things. But I think he wants to be a part of this. So we'll get Ping. We'll get Mathis's guys like Chris Kiefer, Travis Marks. We'll get all those folks. We'll argue about Stu and Marty. Any Stu news lately? Anything going on with Stu? We'll talk about all that. We'll do it in person. You can ask us questions. You can make fun of us. We'll make fun of you. We'll all make fun of Mathis. JT and Mathis will argue about things. Check it out. Mathis has been posting stuff about it on his social media at PulpMX. Go to thespacelv.com, find out more about it, and come join us in person and ask us some questions. Participate in one of these shows. And wear a RacerX t-shirt to it. Go to racerxbrand.com, type in exhaust in all caps, get the 20% off discount, and then tell me about it when you come to our event live so I can rub it in Mathis's face that I am a more effective marketing platform than his. And then I will start poaching all of his sponsors. I talked to the guys at Michelin today. Maybe I should have done that. I should have tried to steal them. Also, RacerX main event coming September 14th, 15th, and 16th up in Maine. Go to MX207 for more information on that. I'll be hanging out there, so we'll hang, and I can make fun of Mathis even though he won't be there. There, too. We'll just make it a tradition all around. I even used him as the butt of most of my jokes at the season-ending awards banquet Saturday night at Ironman. It worked out brilliantly. Tip of the cap also to Will Hahn for being a good sport and being a glutton for punishment. So that's our show. We will see you next week. I'm going to go to a Yamaha off-road intro. That means I might just be keeping this off-road podcast theme going. Look, it's my roots, literally and figuratively, my tree roots in this industry. We're in the woods, and I think there's some very good stories out there. I hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll be back next week. Thanks for listening.